Coming up on Cardinals Insider, two historic names are united in the Cards TV booth.
I am not Troy Aikman, but that is Joe Buck. Welcome to Cardinals Baseball. Welcome to the booth.
Plus, the Caray family now has 4 generations of Major League broadcasters.
I could see the path in my father and in Skip and in Harry, but we had to do it our own way.
And later, Adam Wainwright has begun his own TV journey.
You just knew he'd be a fit if this is an avenue that he wanted to do.
All that and more ahead on Cardinals Insider. Welcome to Cardinals Insider. I'm Ozzie Smith. You know, last month, Joe Buck returned to the Cardinals TV booth to join Chip Caray for a single game. Both men have roots with the Cards, and their father and grandfather shared the mic in St. Louis, too.
I am not Troy Aikman, but that is Joe Buck. Welcome to Cardinals Baseball. Welcome to the booth. This has been a long time coming.
Yeah, this is really cool. I mean, the worst thing is that the tarp is on the field, so I guess we've got some time to walk down memory lane and talk about your grandpa and my dad, but this is a fun night, and hopefully we'll have baseball for you at some point.
This is where it all started for you, and for those of us who do this business and grew up in the Midwest, it started with your dad, the legendary Jack Buck. I listened to him every night, going to sleep with the AM radio tucked to my ears. I fell asleep. He was the man that sang me the lullaby every night.
The difference is he got me up the next day, and I was sleeping in, and all I would hear is, "Get up, Buck, I'm not telling you again."
Everybody, of course, who follows the Cardinals remembers your dad, his wonderful career. Many may not know how he got into this business. How did he start? Let's start at the beginning on this night where we begin a series with the Cubs. How did Jack Buck decide, hey, I'm going to be a broadcaster, or did he?
I think that he kind of fell into it. You know, he went to Ohio State on the GI Bill. He didn't grow up with much. Born in Holyoke, Massachusetts. He ended up going and earning a Purple Heart in World War II. Coming out of that, going to Ohio State, his family was living in Cleveland. I think that the cool thing for him, and I'm assuming this is true because he always told me this, was his dad. My dad had cataracts. His dad was a really good pitcher back in his day and was obsessed with baseball. My dad's dad, my grandfather, who I never even came close to meeting, had cataracts and lost his sight. So in the mornings, my dad would read his dad the sports page, and that's how he developed his voice and his love of talking about sports. Went to Ohio State, took some classes, was told he'd never amount to anything, did a couple of years in the minor leagues, and got hired and showed up here in St. Louis in 1954.
And the rest, they say, is history.
Yeah. And, you talked about your grandfather being an orphan.
Yeah.
And how did he get started?
Yeah, it's funny. He was like your dad or your dad's dad. He was an amateur baseball player, couldn't afford a scholarship to Alabama. He couldn't afford the train ticket to get to Alabama where he was going to play college baseball. He grew up on LaSalle Street in Lafayette Square, just south of Union Station here. His home is still there here in St. Louis, and was an orphan, 14 years old, selling newspapers on the streets in St. Louis to get by. He lived with the Argent family, his great aunt who took him in as a 14-year-old here in St. Louis, and loved the game, loved the sport, got involved with it somehow, some way, and somehow through force of personality got involved in radio and somehow got involved with the Cardinals.
You know what I hear when I listen to their calls, certainly with Harry, you can hear the love of Cardinal baseball just oozing out of the pores of your grandfather, my dad. They were as much fans as they were broadcasters, and they wore their emotions on their sleeves, which is really cool to do when you've got a microphone in front of your face.
Yeah, and I think the greatest compliment that Harry ever got was from Dave Niehaus, Hall of Fame voice of the Seattle Mariners. He grew up in Princeton, Indiana, and every summer he and his uncle would jump in the truck and make the trek to St. Louis to go to Old Sportsman's Park to watch a game. And Harry built it up so big, so powerful. The players were these colossal human beings. He got to the ballpark and said, "This is it?" Because they made it, your dad and Harry, bigger than life here in St. Louis.
Come on, Chip, give us a Harry Caray, please.
Hey, Buck said backwards is Cub. What the hell's going on around here?
That's
outstanding. All right, Harry. It's a nice evening here at the old ballpark.
Chip Caray experienced another special game earlier this season. His twin sons, Chris and Stephen, have followed in their dad's footsteps as baseball broadcasters. This year, Chris joined the Athletics TV crew, meaning he and his dad got to work the same Major League game when the Cardinals visited Oakland.
Well, this is a special day for our family. That's my boy. His fourth Major League game as one of the TV voices of the Oakland A's.
You know, there are only 30 of these jobs, and that's what's so amazing about it is that two of us have them. And Chris worked very hard in Amarillo and worked his way through college. And I kept telling him, you know, the harder you work, the more you're out there, someone's going to notice you. And they did in Amarillo, and they obviously did here in Oakland when we went to interview at the winter meetings. But when he said, you got the job, and he said, I got the job, we all burst into a big cheer, popped some champagne, and celebrated this incredible accomplishment for a 24-year-old kid.
I feel like every kid is enamored with sports at one point or another. I played Little League, and I was an athlete to a degree. I think it's one word for it. Others would say otherwise. But I just grew up listening to my dad, but it wasn't the same way as people would expect it to be. With him, it was just another job. It was, hey, this is what Dad does. And then when I was able to sort of conceptualize what he did, and then I really got into it in college when I took on a headset my first year, freshman year of Valdosta State, and then went to Georgia, and my twin brother joined me there, and we did it together, and then, the Cape League in Amarillo, and here I am.
Baseball is so much a part of our life. To see someone I'm related to want to do this, and seeing the good and the bad, want to take on that challenge of carrying that torch forward is really, really amazing. And it seems like yesterday I was the one getting it on opening day in 1991, and now, 30 plus years later, I'm handing it off to one of my sons with another torch to pass to another one, and another torch to pass, we hope, to a 15-year-old down the road.
You just never knew the path until you could be more mature and understand, hey, this is how it starts and this is how it ends, but there's a lot of meat in between that you have to get through. And I could see the path in my father and in Skip and in Harry, but we had to do it our own way.
Straight ahead on Cardinals Insider, Chip talks about his grandfather, Harry Caray.
He always broadcast the game from the perspective of a fan.
That profile when we return. Harry Caray manned the Cardinals radio booth from 1945 until 1969. Nationally, he's remembered for his antics in Chicago, but he grew up and established his career here in St. Louis.
Well, he was born and raised here. He was a St. Louis kid, a kid that grew up during the Depression, was an orphan, didn't really know his mom or his dad for that matter very well. They both either left or passed away when he was very young. But like so many people who are from St. Louis, grew up loving the Cardinals. And
there she goes again, it might be out of here. There it is, another home run. 4 in a row for Musial.
He always broadcast the game from the perspective of a fan. He didn't broadcast, as he said, for the suits or the players or the managers. He broadcast the game like he was buying a $1 ticket and sitting in the stands and living and dying with each and every hit, pitch, or error.
Here's the pitch. Line drive, there it is! Into left field! Hit number 3,000!
I think in his day that was very exciting. Before there was television, the theater of the mind that Harry Caray and Jack Buck created on KMOX was what enthralled so many people about baseball. Harry's style made the ballpark look and feel like the Roman Colosseum. The players were all the size of Hercules and big giant colossuses, and he just had this unique ability to make the game seem bigger than perhaps it really was. But there was no better showman, no better salesman, no better ambassador for the sport on radio, especially when Harry started in 1945.
Here's the pitch. Swung, there she goes. Way back. It might be. It could be. It is.
But it's been really fun to come back to St. Louis and hear so many people say, I used to listen to your grandfather when I was a little kid, or the stories that they would tell, and finding out where his old haunts were, and going to see his high school in Webster Groves. And it closed a circle for our family that I didn't ever think would be closed in a certain degree. I was supposed to work with him in Chicago. That didn't happen because he passed away. But in a strange sense, coming back to St. Louis, where it all began for us as people and as broadcasters, has really been rewarding, it's been humbling, and it's really been a lot of fun.
It's time for this week's trivia question. In what year did KMOX broadcast Its first Cardinals game was it 1922, 1926, 1940, or 1969? The answer when we return. We're back with the answer to this week's trivia question about KMOX. Here it is.
We're ready to reveal the answer to this week's trivia question. As always, it is brought to you by the Palm Beaches, Florida's most stylish vacation destination. We're asking, in what year did KMOX Radio first broadcast the St. Louis Cardinals? The answer is 1926. There's some disagreement about if that first game was in 26 or 27, but most sources do recognize 26. KMOX is the best-known station to carry the Cardinals, but in the days before exclusive rights holders, multiple local stations would actually carry the ball games simultaneously. That all changed in 1948 when then-owner Sam Braden established the club's first radio network.
Welcome to Cardinals baseball from St. Louis, Missouri.
Outlying markets would carry the broadcast of a single flagship station, and with the exception of just a few years, that station has mostly been KMOX. For decades, St. Louis was MLB's most southern and westernmost market. Even aside from the network, KMOX itself blasted the Cardinals to the furthest reaches of the continent, making baseball fans out of millions of people whose closest big league city was St. Louis.
Line drive, there it is! Into left field! Hit number 3,000! A run is scored! Musial around first! On his way to second with a double!
The Midwest and the South, and as far as our signals would carry, were all Cardinal fans. And we did have a far-flung network of around 125 stations. So I know a lot of people probably were raised on Harry Caray's style of baseball broadcast.
The station's 50,000 red-hot watts are a Clear Channel station. That means no other American radio station may have a 24-hour license to broadcast on 1120 AM. So when conditions are right, KMOX can be heard from Atlantic to Pacific, from the Great Lakes to the Gulf of Mexico. Admittedly, that's a feat that's a little less stunning in the internet age, but it shaped the landscape of baseball fandom in an analog era where it was radio that ruled the broadcasting scene. And it doesn't hurt that some of the greatest announcers in baseball history have lent their voices to Cardinals coverage. A tradition that's upheld today by John Rooney, Ricky Horton, and Mike Claiborne. KMOX and the Cardinals, two St. Louis icons with a shared history that's still building. For Cardinals Insider, I'm Brett McMillan.
Adam Wainwright is staying busy in retirement. He owns a budding music career and is still active in the game as a broadcaster. He's working for Major League Baseball Network as a studio analyst and Fox as a game analyst. That role brought him to St. Louis for the Cardinals-Cubs on May 25th.
Look, I think that Adam is one of those guys, he can do anything he wants to do. And I think that that's been pretty evident throughout his career and now post-baseball, getting into the media stuff and also with his music career. The guy's just an amazing communicator. He knows the game inside and out. He's just got one of those personalities that's infectious, whether you're a teammate or now you're a viewer watching at home. So you just knew he'd be a fit if this is an avenue that he wanted to do. The analyst role isn't the what necessarily, it's the why, right? And that's something where you're describing, hey, we know what happened now. This is a double play. Why did it happen or how did it happen? And that's where the analyst role, and Adam Wainwright is so good at it, is, hey, this is what he's trying to do with the pitch. This is what the pitch actually did. This is what the hitter's trying to do in this count, and trying to walk the fan and walk the viewer through baseball. And at the end of the game, the hope is that a fan has learned something, and you continue to grow off of that knowledge base. And I think that's one of the biggest things and one of the most fun things about being an analyst is you get to teach the game of baseball night in and night out. The biggest piece of advice, and this is one Adam knows well, because going back to the highs and the lows, he's been through everything, is don't forget how hard this game is. It can look easier when you're sitting in the second deck and you're sitting there in the press box and you're watching the game. It looks easier than it is. always remember what you felt like on the mound, what you felt like in the box, and how the game looks and the speed of it when you're down there. So that is my biggest piece of advice to anybody doing this. Don't forget how hard it was and how hard this game is. My joke is, you can look at the back of my baseball card, I'll tell you how hard the game of baseball is, but it is true. Like, this game is very difficult, and there are times and there are moments where something looks simple, but you know in your heart of hearts it's not.
Still to come, learn about the greatness of Negro leaguer Willie Wells.
Willie James Wells, who I tell people was Ozzie Smith before we ever knew who the Wizard was.
Shortstop Willie Wells was a slick defender with a big personality. Our Brett McMillan has more on the Negro League's superstar.
He was a defensive savant at shortstop, yet could deliver pop at the plate when needed. He was exciting and athletic, someone fans wanted to show up and watch. Yes, all those things apply to former Cardinal Ozzie Smith, but they also apply to his fellow Hall of Fame shortstop, Willie Wells, one of the centerpieces of the Negro League's St. Louis Stars.
El Diablo, the devil, Willie James Wells, who I tell people was Ozzie Smith before we ever knew who the Wizard was. Willie Wells was making those same kinds of acrobatic defensive plays that captivated the hearts and imaginations of St. Louis Cardinal fans and baseball fans as well. The way the Wizard was doing that kind of stuff there at Busch Stadium, Willie Wells was doing that same thing at Stars Park and other places across the country. But here's the kicker. Willie Wells was a power-hitting shortstop. And even the Wizard had to take notice of that when I had him for a conversation on my Black Diamonds podcast where we talked about Willie Wells and how tremendous Willie Wells would be the inventor of the batting helmet. Yeah, Willie Wells was notorious for getting beamed because he was going to crowd the plate and he played a very tough tumble style of play. Willie Wells would fight you in a heartbeat. So he got hit quite a bit. And a notorious spitball pitcher named Bill Bird beamed him in a playoff game, basically knocked him unconscious. The medical folks were saying, you can't play. Yeah, you clearly don't know Willie Wells. There was no way you were going to keep Willie Wells out the lineup. The very next day, Willie Wells comes back with a construction helmet and is taped over his head, and that was the advent of the batting helmet. Yeah, Willie James Wells, El Diablo as he was known in Mexico because he could dig it out the dirt.
When we return, I'm answering one of your questions. It's Ask Ozzie, and it's up next. It's time for this week's Ask Ozzie. Sarah in Mulkeytown, Illinois asks, what's the best defensive play you ever saw a teammate make? I think the play that Willie McGee made in the World Series in 1982, stealing a home run from Gorman Thomas, was probably one of the best plays ever seen. And not only that, it was a offensive and defensive series for Willie. You know, so that was probably one of the best moments I had a chance to experience as a player. It certainly thrust Willie in the spotlight, both as an offensive player and as a defensive player. And I think that for most of us that were playing in my generation, it was about playing on both sides of the ball. And our teams in the 80s certainly were teams that played on both sides of the ball. Thanks for the question, Sarah. If you want to submit a question, head on over to cardinals.com/insider and click the Ask Ozzie tab. But for now, don't go anywhere. There's more Cardinals Insider after the break. It's Father's Day weekend, and there are quite a few dads on this Cardinals team. They've made some great plays in their careers, so they're the subject of this week's Redbird Reels.
driven toward right center. At long last, the drought is over for Goldie.
You think these guys are excited for Goldie? Dugout goes crazy. What a swing of the bat right there from Paul Goldschmidt.
Michael has pulled a string. Swing and a high fly ball hit to right. Donnie Goldschmidt out to tie the game.
375-foot shot. Big swing of the bat right there.
And Lance Lynn, he's rediscovering the magic.
Launched into left. Get out of here. See ya. Home run. Nolan Arenado.
Is cut on and missed. Sonny Gray has a double-digit strikeout performance. Driven to right. Well hit. Tatis back. It is gone. It is gone. The Cardinals have won it.
That's it for this episode. You can always catch us online at cardinals.com/insider or watch full episodes on YouTube. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you right back here next week.